Really glad you stopped by. You probably heard this guy's name when he was on Tucker Carlson several times, but I know you've heard his name in the past week because of a video he did over on Twitter. It is Chadwick Moore. He's the author of Tucker. And Chadwick, you broke Twitter the other day. How are you, first of all?
Hey, I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. Really glad that you made some time today. So I'm floating around. Of course, I know who you are. I used to watch Tucker every night. I think you're great. And the information you brought on his show was wonderful. I had no idea you were working on a biography of the man. When you do that, do you work with him? Do you do it independently and then pass it by him afterwards? How does that work?
So it's an independent biography. It's not an authorized biography. So an authorized biography would be when the subject reaches out, they select a writer, they have total control.
Right.
This is independent. So, a publisher came to me and said, we want to do this book about Tucker and we want you to write it. And I approached Tucker and he was just like, sure, fine, great. He gave me, total access over the last year, to his life and his friends and his family. And he hasn't seen a word of the book. He doesn't know what's in it. He hasn't asked to. He actually said to me he hates reading things about himself, so he probably won't read it. But he's been great, and it's been wonderful getting to know him over the last year to write about his world and his life and who he is.
Go and pre-order the book now. It's tuckerthebook.com. Tuckerthebook.com. It's Chadwick Moore. He is the author. We saw that video historically now, famously now, of him fishing in New York. And some guy walking up to him, some independent guy who just likes to video people for social media. And I think the guy had like 3,000 followers and he was really excited about it. He had no idea who Tucker Carlson was. But Tucker was just a cool, normal, regular guy. I've had him on my show. When he started his show on Fox, he came on. And I found him to be a normal, regular guy. Even when he knew that we weren't on yet. Just very nice, very gracious. He's not the right-wing nut job that the left tries to make him out to be. He's certainly not a Nazi, not a white supremacist. He's not even MAGA, to be honest with you. He's just a conservative guy that believes in our civil rights that were procured by God and protected by that document that we all hold so dear. Did you find him to be the same exact guy that I just said, or am I making that up?
Yeah, that's really well put. Exactly as you described it. And also he's very interesting. He's very, very funny.
Yes.
He's super high energy, but he also has a very deep and rich personal life and spiritual life and life outside of politics and his job. His world is not politics, which would make him kind of a bore.
Yes.
That's his job. And although he does care deeply about these things, he cares about other things equally as well. And that shows, and I think that also keeps him sane. And I think that also keeps him to be an everyday normal guy who just he certainly loves people. He loves conversing more than anything. He's a writer's dream, someone like me, because he just loves to talk and he's so entertaining. And you can just, drop a word and then an hour later he'll still be talking about it and it'll gone completely somewhere else. So for someone like me and someone writing a book about him, that's a wonderful subject to have. But, he just cares about things that aren't necessarily what his enemies in particular would expect. And they're going to hate to find out if they ever read this book. He cares deeply about nature and the planet, which is not, of course, to say the climate change hoo-ha.
Right.
And he has such a wonderful relationship with his wife and with his children. And that was really something wonderful and special to see.
It's Chadwick Moore. He's the author of the book called Tucker that's coming out in July. You can pre-order it now, tuckerthebook.com, tuckerthebook.com. What sort of insight did you get into what restrictions he might have faced at Fox? And here's what I mean. I saw when he aired that January 6th video how explosive it was and how it basically got the QAnon shaman, out of prison into a halfway house. And then he never showed any more video. He showed the same video that he showed over a few more times, but he had 14,000 hours at least that his staff was looking through, and they never showed any more. I got the feeling, and you may not have insight into this, but maybe you do, I got the feeling he was told by somebody above him, don't show any more of that video. You can't show any more of the video. What he was doing was groundbreaking journalism that we all should have seen 2 years earlier, and he exposed the fact that somebody was railroaded. A military veteran was railroaded on January 6th into something he didn't do. Do you have any inside information? Was there pressure for him not to show any more of that video?
So I do know that there was, so we talked about this a lot and I asked about pressure. And so, for example, for something like the war in Ukraine, where this was after he was fired, because I've interviewed him a couple times. I'm sorry, not fired. After the show was taken off the air, I've interviewed him a couple times since then and about if any of these reasons were why. And he doesn't believe so, at least from Fox. He told me that something like the war in Ukraine, he said that the Murdochs are very pro-Zelensky And they were happy to disagree. And they told him very much, especially when he was taking a lot of heat for criticizing the war, that they basically said you can do whatever you want. And he said he was always grateful to work under people who let him disagree. Now, when it comes to January 6th, I've seen his final monologue that he was going to read on air on April 24th before the show was pulled off.
Right.
And it was about January 6th. It was about Ray Epps. What I understand about the January 6th tapes is, and I understand why people are suspicious of this, and they ought to be, but from what I understand and from what his producers told me, is they really didn't find a ton in those tapes, and whether that means there were more withheld, but they put out a lot of stuff that they had. I don't know if they had a lot more, but they didn't tell me they had a lot more bombshells, and that's just what a producer told me with that.
You said that in your video the other day. And by the way, it's Chadwick Moore. He's the author of Tucker. Go to tuckerthebook.com, tuckerthebook.com. Pre-order it right now. It comes out in July. In the video, you actually talked about his monologue on the show he was going to do. My question immediately was, and I'm a former TV news anchor, I don't know that anybody ever checked my scripts before I went on, but did somebody in New York or Washington get to see that and get to know he was going to go after Ray Epps again, who, by the way, we should all be going after? Who the hell is Ray Epps? I don't know. We have to figure that out. Did somebody know that? Did somebody see that and say, no, you can't do that? Or was this something that bubbled up all day and they finally said before he went on the air, you can't do this?
Well, he sent it to his producers, who he normally would have sent his script to.
Right.
And they're a very tight team, and he's never had any of them betray him or anything like that. Whether then it got out to someone higher up, I do not know, and they do not know. But he, as he normally would, sent it to the usual people to say, this is what I'd like to talk about tonight. I have I've seen the sort of the rough draft version where he has kind of notes in there to the people who would see it.
Right.
So whether someone else in between saw that, I don't know. But his team was very tight, and no one ever really betrayed him. But whether that was could have gotten out some other way, I do not know, and neither do they.
Chadwick Moore, he's the author of Tucker. Go and pre-order it now, tuckerthebook.com. I found it to be very interesting that they kept on releasing these videos. Fox is pretending that cease and desist, as if they weren't the ones leaking it to Media Matters. But what did Tucker, first of all, how do you feel when you saw those? How did Tucker feel as these were being released? Because I, as a fan of his and somebody lucky enough to have interviewed him once, I thought it made him look even more human. What did he think about those videos that were released on the internet all the time?
Yeah, it really endeared him even more, if that's even possible, to his fan base. You're right about that. It didn't have quite the desired effect. What he got upset about, and I did ask him about that, was I don't think he cared about the videos, because I think he probably felt the same way that we did.
Yeah.
But he did get upset about the fact that Fox disparaged him to the New York Times and said something about he was fired because he was racist, because of some tweet he said, which was not racist at all.
Right.
So he did express hurt and confusion over that. He thought that was not fair and very inappropriate of them to do that. Why kick him on the way out like that? So that did upset him. The videos he didn't seem to mind, because there was really nothing in there to be upset about, I guess.
No, without a doubt, it made him very human. And by the way, that the text that you're talking about, he literally in that text takes a humane look at somebody who's a disgusting person in Antifa. He literally says, somebody loves this person. As much as I like to see him get his ass kicked, somebody loves him, and there are people that would be very upset. I wish that we could figure out some humanity here. So the beginning part of it was something about by people don't fight this way, but by the end of it, he's like somebody who's saying this is a real person, no matter how much I disagree with him politically, and it made him look even more real. Chadwick, I had the opportunity to talk to Megyn Kelly last week. I had her on the show. And she said the way she thinks his contract goes, and you may not know, is that it's pay or play. Even if we don't put you on and you don't host the show, he's still going to get paid. Many were estimating $20 million a year, so it'd be $30 million over the remainder of his contract. In your conversations with him, is he willing to challenge that? Because they probably have some sort of massive non-compete. We can't possibly go into the next election without his voice. Is he prepared to, because he came out on Twitter, he said, I'm coming on Twitter, we're going to be doing this very soon. Is he prepared to put everything on the line to make sure his voice and his image are still out there?
So I have not seen the contract, but he is still getting paid. He's still an employee of Fox News.
Yeah.
And in fact,
which many people lied about, by the way. They said he was fired and he wasn't, right?
No. And someone I still slip up and say fired sometimes because it's just in your head, but that's not true. He is an employee. The last time I spoke to him was a week or two ago, and he said, I just got my paycheck this morning, his normal paycheck.
There you go.
So there you go. So possibly what I understand is that for some reason, Fox failed to include Twitter in his non-compete, and that is why, among other things, like Elon taking over Twitter is so attractive to him. So they are going forward with the show on Twitter. They just told me that very recently.
Good.
And if it works out, if they like the product that Twitter is unrolling, which is this new X video service, then they'll stay there. And if not, they might take it somewhere else. What I understand is that Twitter, for some reason, Fox didn't think to include it in their non-compete, which is why Tucker was able to release those videos on his account, which he did.
Very, very interesting. There was a rumor, and it's Chadwick Moore. Get this book, tuckerthebook.com. Go there and pre-order tuckerthebook.com. He's writing the book Tucker. There was a rumor that he and Don Lemon, who he called Don Lemon and made fun of ruthlessly every night, that they're somehow in collusion. They're working together to see how they can get these big bad media, mighty media masters. Is that even possible that he's actually talking with Don Lemon about a future?
I don't believe so. I don't think so at all. I think that's a troll and a really funny one at that. But maybe I would love maybe just 1 hour of the.
Wouldn't that be crazy?
To see, wouldn't that be wonderful?
They would set all sorts of records. So you put this video out the other day, and you make the connection to Dominion. Now the Dominion lawsuit, I don't think mentioned Tucker Carlson. Maybe it did. But Dominion came out, as you mentioned earlier in this interview, and said almost immediately, nothing to do with us. We did not call for that. It's not on us. I think Dominion wants to come out smelling like a rose. But you're saying you've got inside information that you really trust that this was a part of that.
Well, so more than one person who is intimately connected to the situation told me they had direct knowledge that is the reason why, and they said they're very assured that that's the reason why. So that's what I can report. And it's interesting if you look at Dominion. So Dominion has denied that they did not have any conditions about Tucker Carlson's employment at Fox. That's interesting language because
that is.
They are telling if this theory is true, they are telling the truth in that statement because he is still in fact employed. So silencing someone but still employing them is still a thing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So this is what I've heard, and this is what from more than one source. There was a video leaked, an undercover video on Twitter of a Fox producer saying the same thing. That producer is not one of my sources. I don't know who he is. And other people when other people started saying this in the news, this had been reported before I made my video. I had already heard this before those stories came out. So that's all I can say from what I understand.
Very, very interesting. Do you think Fox had any clue that they were standing to lose $650 million in value just by making that move? I mean, if they saw that, could they just gave up $787 million the week before, and all of a sudden they're going to lose another $700 million by dropping their star? There's no way they could have anticipated that, or did they?
You're correct. I mean, this is a really great question because the first thing people wonder is why would Fox give them this scalp when he was so popular, so powerful? And I asked this, of course, to my sources, and what they said was that these executives and these people who made the decision and this is their words, that they are so completely out of touch with their audience that they literally thought getting rid of Tucker was as if they got rid of Harris Faulkner on Outnumbered. They didn't understand that his brand was as powerful, if not more powerful, than their brand. And they sort of reasoned, well, we got rid of O'Reilly, we got rid of Megyn Kelly, we're always fine. The viewers are upset for a moment. They always come back. We're Fox, we're invincible. Tucker's not bigger than us. That is what my source said was going through their heads. And they just completely didn't know that Tucker was this a movement. He was not just a TV show host, and that he brought in people who don't normally watch cable news, particularly in the 18 to 45-year-old demographic, and a lot of Democrats who would never normally watch Fox News.
Well, Chadwick, it leads to the next question. It's such a natural progression. How did he do it? Here's a guy that we remember from the bow tie on Crossfire. Here's a guy that we knew was part of Fox for a while, and then when it was time, he gets the show at 8 o'clock. How did he make this audience in 6 years willing to run through a building for him?
I think because everything he talks about in his show, he deeply cares about. And it's a connection he has with the audience. There's topics that he covers that no other cable news host could get away with. Like when he talks about something like architecture, Sean Hannity can't talk about architecture because he doesn't care about architecture.
Right.
He doesn't care about beauty. He doesn't care about nature. But Tucker really does care about these things, and it shows, and he won't talk about something unless he cares. And, his background comes from journalism, from writing, and he was a beautiful writer. I think that, his success completely comes from this connection he has and really just the breadth of the things that he actually, his passion for life, which he has, a huge girth of a passion. And it really bleeds out from the screen into the audience. That's really the only explanation I can come to.
Yeah. No, I agree with everything you just said. And on top of that, I would add this. He was talking about the realness of these stories and not fluffing around the outsides because he was afraid of something. He never really seemed to be shuddering in his boots and say, I'm going to take a chance with my career and tell you this. He'd just come out and say, these people are lying. Here's the lie they're telling. Here's why it's a lie. Here's why you should not believe them. And then don't believe me either. Go and fact check what I'm saying. He seemed to be unafraid. And I wonder if there were people in his ear along the way saying, you're pushing it. You better watch it. You're teetering. Do you think that was going on and he just didn't care?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there were certainly a couple times that they were genuinely worried that the show was going to get pulled off the air because of content or something he said. But then they always survived that, and they always kind of had clever ways of smoothing it over with the executives who they thought might be upset. But he always had creative control over his show. No one was looking over his shoulder and saying, you can't say this or can't say that. I'm pretty sure that was probably a part of his contract as well.
Right.
So he really had free reign to say whatever he wanted. And that came through on the air, as you rightfully pointed out. Yeah.
So this is all a confluence that's happening before the book comes out. This works out very well for you, works out very well for us, the consumer of all things Tucker. He must be happy about the timing as well. He can't be happy that a show is not on and he's got to do something in a different format. But the fact that this is all coming out together, this is going to make Fox's loss of $650 million look pale in comparison, I would think, to the amount of money he's going to bring to whatever platform he lands on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, he could start a whole channel of his own and
really
be
could.
totally fine and have complete programming. In fact, they tried to do that at Fox, and Fox didn't see what they had, and they instead gave him 2 shows on Fox Nation because they thought Fox Nation was going to be the future. When originally everyone at Fox knew they were getting ready to perhaps launch a Tucker channel, which would have competed with Fox.
Yes.
But they, as I said earlier, they just didn't understand what they had on their hands. So they're probably a little worried about it now. This seems to be very different than getting rid of any other host that they have in the past.
Going to sound like a dumb question, and I'm almost out of time, but if they wanted to, because they still employ him, could Fox say, hey, we're putting the show back on tonight, man, we screwed up?
I mean, I suppose they could, but I guess you'd have to, you have lawyers involved with that.
Right,
Maybe there's something in the contract that would prevent them from doing that. And would Tucker do that again? Who knows? I mean, at this point, it seems that there's no way to mend this divorce.
No, I can't wait to see what he does next. I can't wait to read your book. This is going to be amazing. Chadwick Moore, the book is called Tucker. Go to tuckerthebook.com, tuckerthebook.com. Follow Chadwick over on Twitter and everywhere else as well. Come back on the program again, would you?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate having you on. We're back after this. Stay right here.